guys for taking out time to hear about us. So before, instead of taking much of your time, I'll just go straight away. Yeah, thanks. Straight away go to a video that can summarize what we've been doing at ShareChat for last 5 years now. Can you please go to the next slide? You can do that. I can do that. Oh, great. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah, thank you. As the presentation pointed out, ShareChat is the first ever platform that focused on the next billion users of internet in India, and we help people discover content and people in their own language. We are India's largest platforms, allowing users to express their opinions, record their daily lives, and find new friends. Most of I'm sure a big bunch of you would actually belong to tier 2 towns and tier 3 cities from where you've come to Bangalore, Delhi and Mumbai. If you remember, most of our lives, at least of the people who you've left behind in your hometowns, still revolves around the people in their vicinity. And that really opens up a scope for people to interact with more people to find new content, people to find new interests, and people to really develop their horizon of thinking beyond what they see in their vicinity in a tier 2, tier 3 town. And that is what we as a platform provide for this next billion user. So if I can quickly take you through the app has a simple feed, just like how any other social network has a simple feed, which helps you in discovering content. But the one part where we deviate from any other social network is that we are not an English only or an English first social network. We are a regional language focused, Indian language only social network, where if you, let's say, you join Odia, for instance, you will end up consuming content in Odia. You will find content creators from Odia, and you will find people with similar interests, but only in Odia. Of course, you can speak in Hindi there, people will understand you, but that's a very small margin of people. Other than that, of course, there are multiple ways to create content on the platform, and we've done a lot of user research to make it very easy to use. So before I jump on the timeline, something about why and how we make it easy to use. So can anyone in the audience tell me a Hindi word or a Telugu word or any Indian language word for the word privacy? Anyone? Okay, great. If you try translating privacy into Hindi, the closest word you can get is gopniyata. Gopniyata is not privacy, it's secrecy, right? And because a lot of constructs with which the English or the American society is built are non-existent in India, the American or Western social networks will not be able to completely fathom everything that comes under that happens in the Indian society. And moreover, there will be a lot of constructs which will be completely alien for Indian folks. In India, we don't have privacy. You live with folks all around you. You live with folks all around you, and you end up being more public and and open from day one. There is, and hence that sense of freedom of expression is imbibed in us from a very early age, and that really changes the way how you perceive your internet identity. And for a new internet user who's come on the internet for the first time, imagine yourself in 2005 on Yahoo Messenger. You were a very, very different individual from what you are today, not just physically, but also on the internet. Hence, we did a lot of features and a lot of user research around creating the app much more easier and much more simpler to understand and easy to use for this next billion user. Yeah. So on the timeline, so we started out in November, December of 2014. That was the first time we discovered that there is a set of people in India, and mind you, at that time there was no Jio, there was no Xiaomi. Micromax was one of the largest mobile phone manufacturers in India. India had 2G as the main internet network. Some parts were having 3G. Internet adoption was still not massive. We had at around 125 million internet users in India at that point. Actually 150. So at that point in 2014, while trying to tinker with Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups, trying to figure out what would be the next social phenomena, we stumbled upon this group of people who on Facebook who wanted to move away from Facebook and go on to WhatsApp, but they weren't really aware of why they want to move from Facebook to WhatsApp. And it wasn't very apparent because Facebook groups provide you content, they provide you people, they provide you everything. But then why are people moving to WhatsApp groups? And the simple answer that we came up with was, it's because since in a group, in a WhatsApp group, in a chat environment, you don't really have to care about the language. When you're chatting with someone, most likely you will be chatting in a language which both of you know. And the same would apply to a group where you have people who are speaking the same lingo, using the same text, probably using the same script, and definitely maneuvering inside similar vocabulary. And that is what made chat groups a much better way of consuming content. The lacuna in the wall being language. And that is where we realized that, if Facebook provided content in Indian languages, if Facebook provided a shared space where people who come and talk to me, people who come and interact with me, all my content are definitely speaking the same language, or I'm definitely able to understand what the other person is saying, what the other content creator is saying, my affinity towards staying in that group would increase. And that is how we stumbled upon the idea of, let's make a platform where users of internet in Indian languages can discover content in their own language. And then we, in October 25th, so we kept tinkering for around 10-11 months, trying out various models, chat groups, chatbot store, and ultimately at some point we saw two very interesting insights. One was that, so something important before that. So between November 2014 and October 2015, we used to have English as another language option because, well, in India people do speak English, and from our anecdotal evidences, our lives, we could see that, everyone around us does speak English. But what happened around August, September 2015 was we saw 90% of our users were picking English as their first language of preference. But their engagement was super poor. They were leaving the app in like 2 days. While the 10% people who were picking their own language, they were sticking around for 35 days, 40 days, engaging 3 to 4 hours a day. And that really made us think that, why do we need English? If we just remove English, it wouldn't happen that people would say, I don't understand anything, this is all gibberish. Everyone who's born in India knows at least one Indian language. There's hardly anyone in India who would say, bro, probably the latest generation of 5-year-olds might not know it, might not know Indian languages, but everyone else who's on the internet and who's going to come on the internet for the next 10 to 15 years will have some or the other Indian language as a default language, as a mother tongue, as something they can understand very easily. And so with this in mind, we decided to remove English altogether, and the other thing we realized was people want a lot more content than what the internet would provide. And it just made sense to go into a feed-based model without English, with only Indian languages. Now the challenge that comes there is when you are a feed-based model, what will happen is people will scroll through content very quickly, very easily, so you will run out of content very soon. If you as a platform run out of content very soon, people will leave the app. Then how do you maintain inflow of fresh content? You have to become UGC. You have to be a user-generated content platform. But as soon as you become a user-generated content platform, why will people post on your platform? What incentives do they have? So then there are two options. You can either give monetary incentives or you can give psychological incentives. As soon as you start giving psychological incentives in a feed-based model for a UGC platform, it's called a social network. I'm giving you followers, I'm giving you views, I'm giving you short-term engagement in the form of likes, shares, and comments, and then I'm giving you a platform where you can become an influencer over a very long period. That's Instagram, that's YouTube, that's Facebook, that's Twitter, and that's ShareChat. So then, then we launched our user-generated platform with 4 Indian languages. We started with 4. We didn't start with 1 alone because we wanted to have a very generic understanding of what happens when you get a non-English user online for the first time. We didn't want it to become a Hindi platform or a Telugu platform or a Tamil platform. And then over the years, we were able to get a good amount of user traction. As of today, we stand at around 60 million plus monthly active users and around 16 million daily active users. Each of them spending around 22 minutes on an average per day on the platform. One key thing that allowed us to grow so rapidly, which I will cover in more detail in the next slide, was the reason why people downloaded the app and then forwarded it to their friends. And that was the ability to share content onto WhatsApp. People love sharing. And why do people love sharing? Because when you're not a creator, when you don't have enough tools to create content, the best thing you can do is find something interesting. Like, if you look into your daily lives on an everyday basis, you find a great article, a great news piece, or a meme, or a joke, or a suvichar, or a very good morning message. You end up sharing it with your friends, or with your WhatsApp groups, or with people for whom that might be relevant. And for a large chunk of Indian consumers who are sitting on very text-oriented platforms on a 2G network with television and print as their only medium to interact with the world beyond their vicinity, sharing content was that one behavior that allowed them to expand their horizons, and that's one thing that we latched onto. As of today, we have more than 1 billion shares happening every month on the platform. As a result of the growth that we saw, we ended up being in almost all states. Yeah, even I was surprised when I saw Itanagar popping up in Arunachal Pradesh as one of our big geographies right now. So if you look at Malappuram in Kerala, or you look at Kachipuram in Tamil Nadu, or Sivakasi, or Patna, or Muzaffarpur, these are like top geographies for us, which is not something you would find in the case of a Twitter, or a YouTube, or an Instagram, maybe Facebook, definitely WhatsApp. So yeah, getting back to, so before I go to word of mouth, what did this growth cause in the life of this Indian consumer? So before we came around, before we happened to come into existence, voicing opinions online was something which was a totally English territory. If you're smart, if you're witty, if you can express yourself in 140 characters, you can go on Twitter and you can be big on Twitter. If you are not smart, but you are probably aesthetically in a great place, like, and you can put your photos up somewhere, you would go on to Instagram. Whether it's photos of your food, whether it's photo of your travel or your pet or your own self or the fashion accessories that you have. Or let's say you're a creator, you are someone who does vlogging, someone who wants to share their daily life, their daily experience, you can go on to YouTube. But all of these things have certain barriers, all of these experiences where you can voice your opinions online, where you can start a business or where you can showcase your talent, all of these require you to be on, one, a great internet connection, two, probably speaking English, three, be very, very relevant with the times. Someone who's sitting in Itanagar or Shivakashi or Muzaffarnagar or Kushinagar or any of the 800 cities, towns that we have in India doesn't actually have that exposure, doesn't have the diction, doesn't have the vocabulary, doesn't have, in some cases, keyboards, doesn't have, in some cases, camera, doesn't have anything that can get them at par with someone who's sitting in Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore. And on the other side of the spectrum, people in Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore, even if they are shit, like, sorry for my language, even if they're shit, like if they are bad creators, even if their opinions are not well informed, even if the things they are trying to sell, it's snake oil, they would still be able to use these platforms, leverage these platforms, build out their businesses, voice their opinions, start a protest, do a revolt, and do everything that you do on the internet today. And that is what ShareChat did to the lives of these users. We leveled the playing field for the tier 2, tier 3 internet consumer. We brought them at par with the tier 1 internet consumer. Something that happened as a resultant of this process, which we also didn't envisage in the very beginning, was that people started adding a lot of utilitarian stuff onto the platform. They started putting up question papers, they started putting up cheat sheets, they started putting up, by the way, cheat sheets are not for cheating, they are for revision. They started putting up cheat sheets, they started putting up IAS Prashnotri, IAS preparation Prashnotri, they started putting up banners asking people to, like for instance in this case, the Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi, sorry, Manthan, yeah, that's the one. So for government organizations, because these people were not online, because the playing field was not level, because people, like 4 families used to collect together to watch TV in tier 2, tier 3 towns up until 2015, they wouldn't have a phone in their hand with which they could use any OTT app or GeoTV or Doordarshan and just watch whatever content they want. Dissemination of information, dissemination of important policies, dissemination of new rules, any kind of information distribution, any kind of information discovery, any kind of utility discovery was too hard, was too difficult. It was very difficult to reach to this last mile consumer. And that somehow we ended up solving it without really planning for it. So that brings me to the point around how do you then, someone who you cannot find in a traditional way, who you cannot reach out at the last mile level through traditional media, which have existed in India for 20-30 years, TV, print, radio, in all 3 cases, this last mile communication was very, very difficult before we came out. So how do you decode communication for regional India? So the first thing we did was we decoded it for ourselves. That's where you begin. As I mentioned, sharing as a behavior is something we latched onto. So I'll talk a bit about what really word of mouth is. It's there right on top of the slide. So the way I think, or the way the founders of the 3 founders that we are at ShareChat, we thought about word of mouth was, if you are able to give a lot of value to a consumer with very, very minimal effort. The consumer is satisfied enough to share this service with their friends. But if you're not able to reach out to this consumer, you'll have to growth hack your way into your first set of consumers, and then from there onwards, the same growth hack has to ride, you have to ride on to the same growth hack to actually spread word of mouth. Because if it's difficult for me as a company, as a app maker to reach out to this last mile consumer, how will one last mile consumer reach the other last mile consumer? That's going to be even more difficult. So word of mouth inherently will be very difficult. So one thing we realized that if you take a general user's lifetime, if you take things they do in their life at a daily level, and you latch on to a behavior which is very core to their existence on the medium you are targeting, or very core to their existence on the internet in this case, you will be able to leverage that behavior to grow your word of mouth. And how did we do it? So 1 billion messages a month. That's what we've quoted here. 1 billion plus messages forwarded every month. If you take a general conversion of a marketing message to, let's say, a link click, it's around 8 to 11%. For ease sake, let's put it at 10%. And as an app developer, I know that from my app page to an install number, to getting installed, that conversion ratio is also at 10%. So if I take 1 billion messages and take a 10% of it, that's 100 million page views. And if I take 10% of that, that's 10 million installs. And that's exactly how we have grown. Like it's as simple as that. Every content that you discover on the platform, every content you like, as soon as you share it with your friend, there's a 1% probability that that person will click on the link that goes with the content and ultimately end up installing our app. But the funnel doesn't end there, because when your friend also joins the platform and your friend also shares, and let's say you shared with 10 friends, those 10 will also share with 10 each. And that's how you keep growing your funnel exponentially at every scale. And that's how we do. So as a lot of people say, the best PR that you can have is word of mouth. And that's what our PR was up until 2017. At that point, something very interesting happened in 2017. We grew from, I think, from point of zero to around 25 million monthly active users. I think by around 2018 mid, we were at 25 million monthly active users, and that was all through word of mouth. But that is where something very interesting happened. Because now there were 25 million monthly active users, imagine like if I 5 people together and 5 people are discussing something, we will have an opinion which will, and let's say we come to a consensus. That opinion will be the local maxima of us 5. But if we get 500 people, if we get 5,000 people or 50,000 people, the local maxima we have will be more closer to the common wisdom. So if there is an AI which is implemented on top of this wisdom, which helps you discover content, which shares content onto your feeds, at 25 million, as we grew from 0 to 25, our recommendation got better. As our recommendation got better, our time spent got better. Our growth curve even got much faster to the stage where from 25 million, we actually got to 60 million today in a span of 1 year. Now at this stage, what happened was we had to work a lot on a lot of other things that would be needed to build the infrastructure to keep it growing. That required us, so those things were basically hiring better talent, and 2, building business partnerships. So we had become really popular in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns at that time, but we were still not popular with people sitting in Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore. People who run businesses, people who are involved with traditional media, your newspapers, your television, your radio, all 3 live in big cities. They don't live in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Even in big cities, they live in the topmost areas. They are not, and they end up most likely being iPhone consumers. So they are not at all attached to this user base. And that is where, and the plethora of partners you can get range from a Dainik Bhaskar, Dainik Jagran, Sanskar TV, up until Siddhi Vinayak Mandir and Sadhguru and the whole lot that you have that runs India traditionally. Whether it's Red FM, whether it's PVR, whether it's a movie production house in Telangana. So for that, we had to take a very different stance from just relying on word of mouth, and that is where our traditional, or I would say not traditional, but yeah, our PR journey began. So what was the one thing that we did different from any other PR unit, any other PR unit, or any other corporate PR unit in India? So generally, this is from whatever I could experience, whatever our team could experience. Generally, what happens is when you try to publish something in regional media, you actually make a script for an English daily, and then the English daily produces the news, and then the regional media just copies it verbatim. There is no customization, and many times there is hardly any relevance. For instance, Economic Times, sorry, I'm taking names. Economic Times might be talking about, let's say, oh, ShareChat raised this much capital, ShareChat has these many employees, ShareChat has this kind of an office, it's a great place to work, blah, blah, blah. They have great AI, they have great ML, all of this. Then there is a Chachaji sitting in Kanpur. He got his Dainik Jagran. And there he reads, Acha, ShareChat has AI, ShareChat has ML, ShareChat has employees, ShareChat has this much funding. What will the Chachaji do with that? Nothing. It's useless information. It's just PR for the sake of PR. There would hardly be any brand recall. Like it can be, why will then the PR affect that end reader? It wouldn't, because it's not relevant. It's not customized. It's not meant for the readership of a Dainik Bhaskar, a Dainik Jagran, an Inadu, or any of these newspapers. And that is where customization became one of our key strategies, trying to grow our brand presence, our brand recall, and our PR presence in the regional markets. Yeah. So if you look at today, 9 out of 10 newspapers are non-English. 9 out of the top 10. If you look at TV, it's even worse. And if I will actually try to leave a question here, that if you look at your consumption on Netflix, as soon as Sacred Games comes in, everyone in India starts seeing Sacred Games. Every Netflix consumer. People want your Indian content. Even the tier 1 audience, they want Indian content. And hence, if you look at television viewing, the first 22, this data can be wrong, don't quote me anywhere, but the first 15 to 20 television channels, the top 15, 20 television channels, none have a single element of English. The top channel you think of is Colors, or Star Plus, or ZTV. You don't say Z Studio, you don't say Romedy Now. That's not even in the top 50. They're like out there somewhere. So so traditionally also, the mass of India, the content, the mass content that you have in India is not in English. If you look at the current readership of newspapers, there are 488 million readers across 22 vernacular languages, and yeah, that's a big number. 1.2 lakh registered publications, with only 14% being English. So I'll leave you with one thought, that while everything that we've been doing is great, if we really want to build PR in India, if we really want to build that brand recall ecosystem, that brand penetration ecosystem, that powerhouse of a workforce that is interested in spreading information out, the answer for all of us lies in being regional. And the future of PR in India is definitely going to be regional. Thank you.